When life happens, plans need to change. Shaping Change, hosted by certified financial planner Ross Marino, is dedicated to helping financial advisors better serve their clients when life takes those unexpected turns.
Welcome to the Shaping Change Show. Today, I'm joined by Taylor Schulte, founder of Define Financial, host of Experiments in Advisor Marketing. Hello, Taylor.
Ross, how we doing?
Glad to be alive. Glad to be on the show with you. It's a good day.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
So let's start off with your focus. You talk about retirement planning. If we go to your website, you say that you work with people over the age of 50. So I'm thinking back when you started as a financial planner, day one, you probably weren't putting all of your emphasis on retirees, pre-retirement, people over 50. How'd you get to that point of saying, this is where I need to focus?
Yeah, you're right. I have not been this focused my entire career. In fact, I've been a financial advisor for, I think, about 15 years, and it's taken me about 14 years in order to get specific and narrow and actually commit to serving a niche. So it's been a long journey. I've learned a lot along the way. I've made a lot of mistakes, but yeah, on day one, I was a financial advisor, 22 years old for a large wirehouse firm, and we were taught and trained to essentially work with anyone with money, and bring on anyone and everyone. And so I was there for 5 or 6 years, and I built a small practice. I don't know if I had, 25, 30 clients or so, but they all looked different. You had some young professionals, I had some high net worth people and everything in the middle. And when I eventually went and started my own firm, I realized what a chaotic mess it was. Not only did every client look a little bit different, everybody's portfolio is different. Like, it just wasn't a scalable practice. And what you'll often hear from a lot of advisors, and if you read research from Michael Kitces or Angie Herbers, there are growth barriers in this profession. And you get to this point where you're like, I can't grow. Like, I remember telling my wife, I don't think I can take on another client right now, and I'm like, why am I hitting this wall? And it was because my practice was kind of chaotic and it was kind of a mess. Back to kind of your original question, what happened one day is we send an e-newsletter out to our clients, like a lot of advisors do. And this newsletter, the topic was disability insurance and, the importance of it as a young professional. And one of my retiree clients replied back and said, I'm retired. Why did I get this email on disability insurance? I don't need disability insurance. And that was kind of like the moment that stuck with me. It's like, okay, if I'm going to try and serve multiple demographics here and I'm going to educate through content marketing, I'm going to have to, operationally make some giant changes here and start to segment clients in my email and send certain emails to this demographic and certain emails to this demographic. I'm like, and so, long story short, ultimately decided to just pivot and go all in on one single niche and just own that niche. And happy to talk about the process that we went through to do that. But that's essentially kind of how it happened. And it took a long time to get there.
So there's the day where you say, this is it. I'm going to focus on retirees. You've got this book kind of hodgepodge. I remember that day myself. And I also remember sitting in conferences where they'd say, you have to have a niche. You have to have a niche. And I'm thinking, I have to have quarterly income. I need clients. I can't get rid of half my clients. I don't have enough prospects where I think I could just instantly transition the practice. For most advisors out there, that's just scary. Did you experience that?
Yeah, it's absolutely terrifying. The analogy that I've used is I'm an avid golfer and I'm always trying to improve my game. And once in a while, I'll go find a new golf coach to train with. And every time I hire somebody new, my game goes backwards before it goes forwards. I got to relearn some things and fix some bad habits. And so my game kind of suffers for a period of time. And then I end up, improving. And that's what this process was. And I think it's going to be that way for anybody. So if you're setting expectations, if you do have a chaotic practice and you're wanting to niche down and get more narrow, you kind of have to expect to go backwards before you can go forwards. And that's essentially what we did. So the first thing that I did was get really clear on what that niche looked like, because it couldn't just be retirees, right? That's still too broad. Some experts will say that the perfect niche is 15,000 people or less. And so in order to get to that initial 15,000, we had a few criteria. One was $1 million or more in investable assets. Another was age 50 or over. The other was a delegator, which is kind of hard to quantify. And then lastly, the primary target market was San Diego County. So kind of putting all those things together got us to that 15,000, 20,000 number. Now, some things have changed since then. I've got now a national reach through my retirement podcast. And so it's not just San Diego County anymore. It's still our primary target market, but we've expanded outside of that. So I would say to anybody, the first thing is to actually document your niche and get like as clear as possible. I love this idea of creating this avatar and giving that avatar a name and a profession and an age and an income and, you know, how many kids do they have? Are they married? You know, all this like draw and create this avatar of your perfect client. And that's often the hardest part. And then from there, it was identifying, okay, if that's our avatar, who in our practice that we're working with right now, you know, who doesn't fit that, you know, that avatar. And that's the hard part. It's easy to create that list of who doesn't fit, but the hard part is now having conversations with those clients and then transitioning those clients out. You know, not only are you having hard conversations with these people, some of which were my mom, my grandfather, my mother-in-law's best friend. Like, these are hard conversations to have. But like you said, I've got a family to feed. I need income. I'm also losing income as part of this process as well. So I committed to this process knowing it was going to take a couple of years to kind of get back to even again. And one by one, I had those hard conversations with each person. It was the typical, like, it's not you, it's me, in order to kind of better serve my clients. I'm, you know, getting really specific. I've often used the doctor analogy. You know, you wouldn't go to a neurosurgeon if you needed knee surgery, or you wouldn't go to a divorce attorney if you had a personal injury case, right? And so in an effort to better serve my clients, we're getting more specific. And I just don't think I have the right expertise to help you. And so what I did is I offered for each one of those clients to help find them a more appropriate advisor based on their situation. And one by one, we made that transition. And it was difficult, but that's the process that I went through. And again, went backwards before we could go forwards again. And now we're thriving. And now I'd say most prospects that we talk to say something along the lines of, you know, I've talked to a lot of advisors, or I visited a lot of websites. Like, why don't advisors get as specific as you do? Why aren't there more advisors that have owned a niche like this? To which I'm like, I don't know, but you know, I'm happy you found us, type thing. But it's served us really well. We've never grown more since really getting narrow. So it's been a really good move, but it's a really hard one to make. It's not one to underestimate.
Was it as scary as you thought, or a little different, not as bad? What about the whole experience of shifting?
I think it's as scary as I thought. You know, I'm one of those people, like, I hate letting people down. I hate having those I hate having hard conversations like that. And so, yeah, it was hard. One thing that I did to make it easier, you know, we were talking before you kicked off the show, is like, you can't just copy somebody else and do it exactly like they did it. And so there were some mentors in my life that had gone through similar shifts. And so I learned a little bit from them about how they went through this process. You know, one of them just literally sent out letters to the clients that were no longer a fit, and were like, you're no longer a fit. You've got 30 days to find a new advisor, you know, like very, you know, blunt about it. It's just not my approach. And so I had to think, what's the best way for me to go about this, to feel good about it and not have anxiety and stress over it. And so what I did is I created, I'm not sure if you know Carolyn McClanahan, but she's created these client engagement standards, which she publishes online. You can Google it and find it. But it's just a document she put together that states what her clients can expect from her and what she expects from her clients in order to create a good working relationship. And so I thought this would be a good time for me to put together client engagement standards. And so I put together this document outlining what I just mentioned. And when I met with clients, I used that as a time to talk about some of the changes that I was making to the firm. It kind of reminds me of my wirehouse days when we would cold call. And we'd want to have a reason for making that cold call, right? So you'd send a letter in advance to their home, and then you'd make the call and you'd reference the letter that you sent. So you had a reason to make that call. So this kind of like gave me a reason to have a hard conversation about some of the changes that we were making. That was just one of them. I was also pivoting to only meeting with clients on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. I was also done with driving to clients' homes and meeting with them at their homes. Everything was going to be done in my office or virtually. So I just had some like really big things to talk to clients about. And I was able to use this document as just like, hey, I'm making improvements to my practice. Here are some of those improvements. I want to walk through them with you. I'm going to leave this document with you, and you can sign it and return it if you agree. So long kind of, tangent there, but want to highlight that I use this thing to kind of have that conversation, and that really helped me get through it.
I remember when I made the switch to fee only many, many years ago, and I had to have this similar conversation with my wife and told her that, hey, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going fee only. It was early 1990s, and I had transitioned one client to a fee account already. So, good news is great for the business long term. Integrity, here's what we're doing, sounds great. So that's wonderful. Okay, well, what's the bad news? Well, my first quarterly check is $243, and we're moving. So we went from the comfortable home on the corner lot to a townhome with a bunch of furniture stuffed in. And a couple of years there, kind of lean, Taylor, not going to lie. But, I didn't have kids at the time, so not as scary, didn't have many of the responsibilities other people do. But yeah, it's a tough transition. You go backwards and let's be honest, even though you're going backwards, there's the risk that you're not going to get back to where you were anytime soon. There's just no way to know. Massive bear market, who knows what happens. It's just a scary time for people.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up your spouse, your wife. I always like to highlight in these conversations that there's no chance in hell like I would have gotten through all this and gotten to where I am today without the support of my spouse. Like, I have taken her on a roller coaster of a ride for 15 years. And she has been incredibly supportive, 120% every single step of the way. Never doubted me. Now, granted, like, I've had open and honest conversations about this. It's not just like I'm randomly making decisions on behalf of our family. But if there was just like an ounce of her questioning my decisions or not being supportive or like do what you want and see what happens, like, it just wouldn't have worked. But like, having her by my side, supporting us financially through a lot of this, supporting me emotionally and just being there, like, there's just no way I could have done it. So, just giving me the confidence, having her in my corner. I just always like to highlight that just, it's really important for advisors too, whether you're thinking about starting your own firm or converting to fee only, or, making a big switch like this, like that's going to impact your bottom line. You have to have your spouse involved.
There's no doubt. Now, on my side of the practice for Transitus Wealth, we work with people that go through massive life disruptions in some cases. And the bottom line for them is life happened and now their plans have to change. And part of that ties into a financial plan. And I had drifted a little bit away from the deliverable many years ago. Not that I didn't want to do it or didn't think it was important. It's just NA, non-applicable, when you're dealing with people in so much transition. So I came about that because came to that point because the people that were coming to us really just had their future disrupted. But you're already there. So you're to the point you explained to me where you don't have the deliverable. You're not printing out the plan. Can you talk about some of the reasoning behind that and your experience with it with clients?
Yeah, I feel like this is more and more common these days. You hear this phrase from advisors that a financial plan is a living and breathing document, right? Like the day that I give it to you, it's already outdated. And so, I've kind of carried that philosophy through my career. And, I don't know, maybe 6-7 years ago, got away from, creating your deliverable, your financial plan, and printing it out and like giving it to the client or binding it, whatever, even going through it online. And so we really do position it as a living and breathing document. And we are power e-money users. We've been on e-money's platform for, 7 or 8 years now. Everything, literally everything lives in e-money. Unlike most firms, our clients have fully adopted it as well. So every client is trained to go to the client portal for everything. So everything is in e-money, and we use that as our living and breathing, financial plan. So every time we meet with our clients, I know we're going to get into search meetings a little bit, but we meet with our clients during the month of May and the month of October. And in those meetings, there's a portion of the meeting where we open up e-money and we go through the living and breathing plan and talk through kind of where we're at in that process. The other unique characteristic about our ideal clients, which I didn't mention earlier, and we've actually kind of like learned this now. It wasn't something that was super intentional, but one of the unique things about our clients is that most of them, I would say 95% of them, don't rely on their retirement savings in retirement. They've saved so much money that the question is actually, I have too much money. I don't know what to do with it. I know I'm going to have a giant tax problem. How do I combat this tax issue? We have very few clients that actually like take income from their portfolios and rely on that portfolio to generate income. So there isn't this big looming question of, can I retire? I'm worried about running out of money, which is what a lot of standard financial plans address. Like, are you on track? How can you reach your goals? Our clients are like, no, I already know I can reach all the goals I want. I need to figure out how to kind of unwind this giant pot of money. So that's another kind of piece of it. But I do think more than that, living and breathing thing, it's not a one-time deliverable, and just setting those expectations with our clients. And, if a client is looking for that deliverable, there are advisors out there that do it. It's just not something that, we believe in or think it's important to the people we serve.
When you work with clients who are adequately funded or overfunded for retirement, sometimes it's a challenge to get them to spend money. It's nice to have the nest egg. And of course, there's some of them that they feel guilty about it. I just had a conversation about withdrawals versus income. Whereas if I'm withdrawing from my principal, well, that doesn't feel real good. But if it's income that comes on a regular basis, well, okay, I guess I could spend that. And that's really not the financial side of retirement planning. That's more on the personal side. And as you're walking with your clients through this, I know you put a lot of emphasis on that. How do you engage people to say it's okay to spend, or how do you help them determine what they should be spending on, or help them find a way to really enjoy retirement aside from, I know I have enough money?
Yeah, it's such a challenging thing. I was just talking about this on my retirement podcast, and Michael Kitces actually jumped in to join me for a segment, and he wrote this great paper. Maybe we can link to it, about why most retirees will never draw down their retirement savings. Really interesting article that he wrote back in, I think, 2016. It's true for high net worth retirees and, just kind of, middle class, mass affluent retirees. Most people don't, draw their portfolios down to zero. Most people die with money in the bank. The big challenge for us, or for me, and you might know this, that your habits and behaviors towards money, form at a really young age. Some say around age 7 or 8. And so when you're dealing with a 65-year-old, those habits around money are ingrained in them. And there's this weird, dichotomy. It's like, they've been such a great saver. They've saved so much money. In part, and in large parts, because they have good habits around money, and they're, generally kind of frugal, and they don't overspend, and they're good savers. And it's weird. It's hard, almost impossible sometimes for them to flip that switch and all of a sudden become an extravagant spender. So, number one, giving them confidence in their financial plan, which again, most of our clients know that they have the ability to retire. But from there, it's really talking about, what do they value? And a lot of our clients really value charitable giving. So it's not about spending on lavish things like vacations and flying first class. It's about, how can I really make an impact with this money, and maybe also experience some tax savings along the way. So charitable giving becomes really important. But I'll tell you, I can think of a few clients off the top of my head where, for the last 10 years of them working with us, I've just begged them to go and take that big cruise and go and spend money, and they just can't do it. And they just won't do it. It's because those spending behaviors are ingrained in them. And it's just really, really hard to change that behavior. So I wish I had a better answer for you, other than, I think, having that conversation and talking about what's really of value to them, what's really important to them. It may not be charitable giving. It might be, I want to set my estate up so that when my children and grandchildren inherit it, they inherit it in the most tax efficient way. And so having those types of conversations, rather than go travel Europe or go buy that vacation home. It's often those value, based type conversations that we're having.
We're certainly trying to pivot the conversations with clients where we talk about the things that we know lead to a fulfilling retirement. It's not the one-off vacation, although experiences are great, especially shared experience with family members. That's all wonderful. But what they do on a regular basis, something that's routine, that's social, that's challenging, that's memorable, these are the things that impact their quality of life. And we're just trying to bring that up in the conversations and help them connect the dots. And I think one of the challenges is helping them see some things not as an expense, but as an investment in their quality of life. And maybe at our age, we would look at a personal trainer and say, that's an investment. I've got kids, I've got a family, I'm working. If I need a trainer to teach me how to work out and keep me accountable and be consistent, there's nothing frivolous about that. that's an investment with me. And being able to frame that this isn't an expense in the normal sense. I'm not just spending money, I'm investing in my quality of life and trying to pivot the conversation with clients. I think there's value in that. And you have to have touches with clients. They have to be consistent. You're doing that. You do it in the form of surge meetings. And I know that's a little different than many financial planners out there, where you have a couple of heavy meetings and then you have some lighter touches. I'd love for you to talk about what led up to you saying, we're going to do surge meetings, and how they work and what you've learned along the way.
Yeah, this kind of ties back to my comment about hitting that growth barrier, that growth wall. That's really like the big why for a lot of these pivots and these changes. I just feel like I'm getting stuck. I'm just my practice is chaotic and it's not scalable and it's not growing. I don't feel like I can take on more clients. And so getting really clear and only working with one demographic, right? Age 50 over, retirement planning, allows us to scale our service offerings. It's like we're doing the same thing for every single client. Very, very, very repeatable. So I had the same feeling around meetings. It was like, clients were driving when we were meeting rather than me. It was like, them calling and panicking and freaking out and wanting to come in for a meeting. And now I'm like scrambling to hurry up and prep for a meeting and, have that meeting. And it was just a one-off thing. And so I just felt like it was very chaotic. I also felt like I wasn't really in control. And I feel like as a business owner, as a professional, we should be the one kind of driving the bus here. It feels really good to the client to have, structure and systems and processes. In a weird way, it just feels good to them. One of the comments that I got from a client when we made the switch to surge meetings was, I really respect how intentional you are about your practice. Like, it just feels good to them to know that you're really thoughtful about that in the client experience. So that's really the answer. Was like, it was chaotic. It was all over the place. It wasn't scalable. It's hard to grow when you're having meetings all over the place, especially if you're driving around town, meeting with clients at their homes on any day of the week at any time. And so that was kind of the catalyst for it. How we went about doing it. Again, I used that client engagement standards document to talk to clients. So I kind of called a year-end meeting for all of our clients and met with them one by one and talked through this meeting cadence, this new meeting cadence that we were going to introduce. Again, the positioning was, this is in your best interest, to better serve you and provide more value. We're going to create some more structure. So we're now going to meet with our clients in the month of May. And we say, it's just after tax season. So we'll get a copy of your tax return. We'll do a tax analysis. We'll meet in May to talk about some of the tax planning that we can do for the rest of the year. And then we'll meet again in October when we have a really clear picture of your income for most of the year. And then we'll finalize some of those tax planning things that we're going to do and, review everything before year end. And then we always highlight, we want to have that meeting in October before the holidays hit, and we're all distracted, the family. So not just saying that here's what we're going to do, but here's what we're going to do. And here's why we're going to do it. And here's why it's in your best interest. So that's how we went about doing it. That's why we did it. I will highlight that implementing surge meetings on paper seems fairly simple, like just schedule your meetings in May and October. It is a really, really challenging process. Our workflow for our surge meetings, I think, kicks off now almost 2 months in advance. So our surge meetings coming up in October. I think our workflow is like kicking off here in mid-August to start preparing for those surge meetings in October. So we have a whole process that we go through to get organized internally and get prepared. We send a physical letter to our clients. We're kind of big on physical touches these days. We send a physical letter to clients ahead of the meeting saying, hey, our October meeting's around the corner. In the next couple of weeks, you're going to get an email from us to schedule your meeting. So there's a whole series of events that has to happen in order for it to feel like a really good client experience. We don't want to just be all over the place and it be chaotic for the client. We want it to feel like a really good client experience and a really well-oiled machine. So I would just say to anybody who is interested in implementing surge meetings to set the expectation it's going to take a while for you and your team to implement this. Give yourself some grace. It's probably going to take a couple of years until you finally, figure it out and build the processes to support it. I've heard from some advisors, they've tried to do it and they said it's way too much work. It didn't work out well. It can also be really draining too, right? To meet with a bunch of clients in 1 month, right? That's a lot of work. If you're having, 6-7 meetings per day in some cases, it can be a lot. So you might consider maybe not twice a year, maybe you do 3 times a year or 4 times a year. There's a lot to take into consideration.
You definitely play the long game, Taylor. Everything you've said today, I'm listening and I'm thinking he's thinking 10, 20 years out. When you make a shift to a niche, you're thinking 10 to 20 years out. When you're saying we're not delivering financial plans, we're going to work with you right where you're at consistently and help you make decisions. To me, that's the long game, because I think that's where the industry is going. Surge meetings, obviously the long game. I think that's fantastic. And then I went to your website and I saw a smiling lady with the title Retirement Content Manager. And I thought, oh, I want a retirement content manager. I wonder what she does. I mean, I definitely want one, but what does she do?
Yeah, it's a fancy name for a virtual assistant that helps with a lot of behind the scenes stuff with our content, right? We're publishing blog posts, we're publishing podcast episodes and show notes, and there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes if you want to do it right, to have some support there. So again, we've built a lot of internal checklists and systems and processes. So we don't just write a blog post and hit publish. We throw up on a page, it goes to a creative writer, and then it goes to a copy editor, and then it goes to the virtual assistant to optimize it for SEO and inject images. And then it comes back to me to finalize. So there's a lot of moving parts. And so to have someone like her, behind the scenes to help support us and take weight off my shoulders, has proven to be really critical. One thing I always like to highlight is, I'm a marketing nerd, right? I love marketing. I love getting my hands in there. But when we really step back and think about it, as a financial planner, our time is really valuable. I'd argue that most of our time is worth $1,000 an hour or more in some cases. We really shouldn't be editing blog posts, right? Or learning how to use WordPress or build a website or edit your podcast episode. Your time is just way too valuable. So to pay somebody $40 an hour, $50 an hour, $100 an hour, is a great use for our time. So we have to be really careful as financial planners and remind ourselves, like, is this the highest and best use of my time? And having somebody like her in our corner, it has been a great addition.
It's truly the long game. I'm a believer with you that evergreen content, digital content produced consistently over time is what's going to separate certain firms from other firms. And I just struggle with thinking 5 to 10 years from now, the firms who wake up and say, I think we need to have a digital strategy, let's create content. There's going to be separation between the market leaders at that point in time. And I'm not sure it's going to be real easy to try to close that gap. So once again, you're taking the long game. You're looking at the long approach there. Podcasts, written blogs, YouTube. What do you think about the different mediums?
I don't think the medium matters, surprisingly. I joke, like, you could handwrite letters and snail mail them to your target demographic. And if that's truly what you love and you're just really good at it and you just own it and you stick with it and you're committed to it, I'd be willing to bet you would have success with it. I think, too often we get caught up in what's the best platform, but if you choose podcasting and you hate it and you walk away with a headache and you're tired, or, you fumbled through your words, you just didn't enjoy it, wasn't natural and authentic to you, like, it's not going to work, right? It's just not going to work. For me, like video, I'm not super comfortable on camera and producing video. It isn't for me. One day I might master it and one day I might, spend some time working on it, but it's just not for me. And so I think more than anything, you have to stop and think, okay, what am I really good at? What do I enjoy doing? What comes natural to me? It doesn't mean you have to be an expert, podcaster out of the gates, but just something like you genuinely enjoy doing. And then from there, I think just owning it and sticking with it and not getting distracted by all the shiny objects that are out there, you're going to have success. The great thing about producing content is content can be repurposed. So, you can produce a podcast episode, then I'll take that podcast episode, I'll transcribe it, I'll take that transcription and give it to a creative editor to turn it into a truly digestible piece of content that can then be published on a site like Kiplinger. And now I've got, hundreds of thousands of readers that now have exposure to my content and my podcast. Same thing with video, transcribe or scrape the audio and turn it into a podcast. You can start to repurpose this 1,000 different ways. And again, leverage, independent contractors and virtual assistants to help you do it. So, create that single piece of content, do it really well, make sure it comes naturally to you, just stick with it, don't get distracted. And then you can always repurpose it on other platforms. The last thing I want to say is we often hear, am I too late to the podcasting game or the blogging game? There's, over 1 million podcasts now, and I don't know, like 10 million blogs that are out there. And so I think part of the fear from advisors is like, is it too saturated? And now they're looking for the next bet, is TikTok the next thing? And I always like to remind people, there are how many books that have been written and how many new books that are published every single year. Like, the art of book writing is not going away. And so I'd say the same thing about a podcast. And I think if you can get really specific in your messaging and make sure that you're talking to your target demographic. In fact, I made this mistake a couple of weeks ago. My retirement podcast is very focused, similar demographic to our target market. I bend the rules a little bit. I say it's like age 45 plus, high net worth, retirement saver, tax issues. So it's a little broader than our, firm target market. But a couple of weeks ago, I published an episode just kind of selfishly. It was like a topic I wanted to talk about as a young person. And one of my listeners emailed me and said, I love your podcast, but I don't know why you sent out that episode. Like, it had nothing to do with me as a retiree. And he was nice about it. But it was a good reminder that you have to speak to your target demographic as you build an audience and as you maintain that audience. And it is a way for rapid growth too. The more narrow you can get with your content, the better.
I think it's great advice to tell people to do what they enjoy doing. If you're a writer, then write, because you can repurpose it and keep using it. If you like doing the podcast, great. If you like the video, I like the video. I like the podcasting. I could do this all day long, go home, hang out with my wife, hang out with my kids. I'm energized. You asked me to write an article, which I've done for an online, some website. You have just sucked the life out of me, Taylor. I can crank out the article and I can follow a structure to do it, and it'll get a lot of hits and views, but agonizing. So walk away from that. Just do what you like. And I think the other aspect is it really helps you learn your craft. So if you're going to focus on retirees, that's what you're doing when you produce that type of content. And fortunately, you had a listener that checked you that said, this isn't really in your lane, brother. That's a good sign, but it also means you just keep researching and learning and mastering your message. What a great way to go about that. You have a lot of moving parts to your marketing, but again, it goes back to you play the long game, you know what you're doing, why you're doing what you're doing. And it looks like you're doing a ton of things, and you really are, but you're focused, Taylor. You're focused on where that's going. You're just hitting the spot where you know you need to put your time and your effort. It definitely pays off.
Yeah. Well, one thing I want to say, you've mentioned a few times here, like I'm playing this long game, and I think I am playing this long game, but I want to highlight that it hasn't always been super intentional. Like, I'm going to make this change so that in 10 years, my practice is here or my content is here. A lot of the times I'm really solving for like a current pain point. Again, like practice feels chaotic. I can't grow. I feel like I'm an out of control business owner. Like, I need to solve this problem right now. Now, oftentimes the right solution to those problems take time, and they prove to be a long-term benefit. But I just want, like, I'm not that intentional where I'm like, I'm making this change for 10 years from now. It's just been like, I've learned a lot along the way, and it's just like, okay, I've got a problem, I've got a pain point, and I've got to solve it. And here's the solution. So, I just want to make that clear that I'm not that, that smart and intentional as a business owner.
Well, yeah, it better to be lucky than smart, as we all love to say. I think what it shows, though, is that when you see a pain point, you solve it for efficiency, scalability, productivity. You're doing the things that lead to growth down the road. And not every advisor does that instinctively. So that's why you're growing.
Yeah. I think that's something for advisors to pay attention to. It's something that I do have kind of a superpower for, which is just recognizing when I feel stagnant, things aren't moving in the right direction. I'm doing something that isn't authentic or natural to me, and just hitting the pause button and saying, I got to make a change. I remember when I was at that wirehouse firm, I felt stagnant. I'm like, this is just something, it's just not right. I can't put my finger on it. I think too many people get stuck just kind of just doing the same old thing for way too long. So pay attention. If you are feeling a pain point, know that somebody else out there has been through it too and has a solution for you. Just know that whatever that solution is probably going to be really, really hard. And so doing the hard work to get through that barrier, through that pain point, it's going to be challenging.
So let's pivot to the final question. It is the magic wand, the Disney certified and approved by my daughters. If I could give this to you, Taylor, and you would wave this magic wand, change anything in the world, what would you do?
I don't want to bring us down too much. So I'll say two things. So we recently had a death in the family, and so death has been on my mind. And I'm so grateful for the life that I have. We're very, very fortunate. And I've always been challenged with this idea of death and losing people and fear of my own death. And so with that on my mind, and I guess second to that, I've been a follower of Peter Attia's for a long time. And Peter Attia has done a lot of work in human longevity. And I'm really obsessed with a lot of that stuff. And so just because it's on my mind, I'd say, gosh, if I could wave a magic wand and be like, live as long as I want to live. And, let my family members do the same. And maybe even more than that, if I could pick something really specific, like curing cancer would be an absolutely amazing thing to wave a magic wand and get rid of. But yeah, on a positive note, I am super excited about human longevity and a lot of the work that Peter and his team is doing. And it'd be really cool to see, where that goes in the next 20 or 30 years.
So once again, Taylor is playing the long game.
There you go.
Taylor Schulte, thanks so much for being on the show today.
Ross, appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for listening to Shaping Change with Ross Marino. This show is for general information purposes only and is not intended to provide recommendations or advice. Speak with a legal, tax, or financial advisor before making any decisions. Past performance references are historical and do not guarantee future results. Visit rlsummit.com to learn more.